What's the similarity between the new Cloudrise patch and a pregnant mother? They both did not fail to deliver. From a shape-shifting 3-in-1 hero to some game-changing adjustments to shake up the M7 meta, this final update of the year has it all. Wait, before I swipe away, you must be thinking, I've already watched like 10 other patch reviews today. So why watch me? Well, I'm not just listing changes. I'm showing you how to actually use them. This video is crafted with you, the audience in mind, so you walk away knowing exactly how to apply this new patch to your own games. Let's go. So for Sora, I won't be breaking down his kit into extreme detail because other creators have already done that and you can view his kit in game yourself. So I'll just be sharing the more advanced tips and tricks and like more of the things that you need to know about this hero. So this will also not feature live gameplay, so if you want to see actual gameplay of this hero in game, you can go and see my video that will be coming out in a few days because I'll be publishing something like that soon, so do look forward to that. So for Sora, the thing that you need to know is that he is inherently a fighter, but he can swipe left to become an assassin and right to become a tank. How this works is because if you look at his passive, he can convert HP into attack and attack into HP depending on which form he decides to transition into. So if you look at his skills, they're actually all the same. Don't think of him as a hero like a 3-in-1 hero. Think of him as a hero with 3 transformations, okay? That will really help you improve your Sora gameplay, okay? So you can see that all of his skills, they inherently do the same thing, just that they have different effects added to it, okay? So I'm gonna show you some stuff that you need to know about him. First thing is that when you transform, your skill shots have to be very precise. Because each time you attack, yes, you charge up the bar and you need 5 to activate your ultimate like this. However, I'm just gonna summon a damage ball right here. Usually, the enemies won't be standing still for you to hit them, right? So obviously, you'll need to hit your skills, and it's actually quite hard to hit them. But once you master the precision, you can actually hit them quite well. So as you can see here, if I hit my skills like that, and this, I can already unlock my ult, which is not only faster, but it's also more practical in a real game. Because his melee means you won't really get to basic attack with him unless you're very close to your target. The other thing that you need to know on this hero is that he has different forms of immunity, which means he can pull off different combos and iframes. For instance, if I'm getting hit by a turret shot and I'm about to die, I can transform into the assassin form, because when I transform, I actually gain untargetable status, which is basically an iframe. It's immunity to damage that has not been cast. So this allows me to escape out of sticky situations, and it helps me as my role as an assassin, right? I want to dive in, I want to be immune to damage, I want to iframe. However, if you swipe right, you actually don't gain damage immunity, and you can see here, if I swipe right to transition into my tank form, I actually gain what is known as CC immunity. So you can see that I still receive the damage taken from the turret, so I'm actually not immune to it. However, I am CC immune. This helps me to engage easier as a tank. It helps me to evade like a Franco hook, a Tigreal push, anything that can come into my way, so I can just soak up everything and become a real tank, okay? And the last thing that you need to know, I'll just share some tips for both his forms. So for Assassin form, you actually can double dash every time you hit a target. However, you might not always want to do that. Let's say this target is far over here, and I have another target here which I'm stacking on. So I'm just going to wait for the cooldown to expire. Actually, never mind, I'm just going to reset it. I will actually transition into Assassin form. I can build up my ult here, however, I don't immediately double dash. I kite a bit, then I dash onto the target that I want to target. This is very important because like depending on your distance between the two targets, you can actually maneuver his dash in different ways, so you can adapt according to the situation, right? Then the other thing is that for your tank form, your primary engage isn't actually your ult. So you can see that ult does some decent things. It can slam them, and they can't actually escape out of this combo. Like there's a very short interval, but in between that you have your CC slams to like keep them locked onto the ground. But your primary engage too will actually be swiping right on your ult. For example, doing this. You can combo with your flicker to pull in someone like this. It's a mini Tigreal ult, which can be very effective, especially if your team follow-ups, right? So that will actually be your primary engage too, and like everything else in the tank form is actually more for follow-up rather than initiation. So yeah, that's just some tips and tricks that I found with the new hero Sora. That's obviously not everything that you can do with this guy. But yeah, if you want to see more, just look forward to a video coming out in a few days, and let's head on to the balance changes. First up on the battlefield optimizations are the adjustments to the roam blessings. Yes, more changes. I was really satisfied with the previous adjustments, but in my opinion, these changes are like a third skin for Phobias. Roam blessings can be sorted into two main categories, offense and defense. Conceal and die hit grants invisibility and damage up, while encourage and favor grants stat boost and heal. So for the offense category, Moonton is actually removing the gold gain from clearing minions with allies, and instead granting gold when roamers hit enemy heroes. So this complements their aggro playstyle, as they are not forced to compromise their invade and zoning potential for lane clearing, and this is a much needed change for our early game annoyancers such as Khalid and Hilda. Now, the balance changes. The biggest change goes to Jusin. Switching up her entire playstyle, Jusin has transitioned from a more poking mage to one with more burst capabilities. Less lantern spamming, more deadly damage. First up, Jusin's S2 smash damage will now scale with the max HP of the target whom she flings. So this allows her to deal damage to the squishies by flinging their fighter or tank, all while maintaining her key role of controlling the front lines. However, after successfully casting S2 on a target, she cannot mark them for the next 4 seconds. Instead, she now deals increased damage to targets that cannot be marked, allowing her to first slam the target down, then deal even more damage afterwards. Of course, this is complemented with mana regen nerfs, but to be honest, she can function without high magic power items since her base damage is already high enough. I'm excited to see how this change affects her playstyle, especially in the pro scene. Aurora's free scaling with magic power will now also apply to her skill too, and not just her ult. Ha! Bet half of you didn't even know about that. This is huge as it really promotes her as a burst mage, pulling off consistent CC chains and baiting out Purify with just her skills, which is a trait not owned by many. Moonton must be preparing for a Frozen collab. However, she will still require meta shifts for her to work, as fighters are still prominent in the lanes which are either hard to burst or are CC immune. Similar to Zetian, setup heroes like her are hard to operate, but I'm interested if pros will use her more for area denial given her terrain coverage. Leomord received a serious change to his kit, becoming a true dark horse. Ha 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 ha. Instead of critting enemies below 50% HP, Leomord's basic attacks and skills now charge up a bar, which crits and restores HP when full. The charging rate is double in its out form. This makes him feel less clunky as players often had to juggle between basic attacks and skills before. With this change, Leomord can now be more independent without his ultimate, with his ult being more of a bonus. Perfect for players who miss their horses. For Freya, her ultimate cooldown was significantly reduced and the execution of her dive will now feel smoother and less threatening to herself. A great adjustment to complement the hero revamp. The biggest change to Barrett's is his ultimate. Half the cooldown now gets refunded if he misses an enemy. Ever since this change was implemented for Matilda and Grog, I was waiting for it to be done to this big dino right here. Much more forgiving. In addition, his ult damage now scales with way more max HP, allowing him to chomp down hard even with a tank build. Along with the ST's buffs, this could bring our lovely dino back from the prehistoric era. Zetian's S1 is now adjusted to deal more damage in the late game by improving its scaling and cooldown. Honestly, a well needed buff for this hero, but if you take a look at my Zetian video, not what I was going for. Zilong's damage from early to mid game has been buffed, allowing him to trigger his passive more consistently and hurt harder before the late game hits. Kufra is getting a simple but crucial buff to increase his damage and sustainability. He was already one of the tanks that could solo MMs in the late game, but with his passive CD reduction, he just got a lot scarier. For Johnson, Moonton made his ult skill of defense instead of magic power. This change encourages players to properly build tank and not throw rank games with magic builds. Lolita can now dish out more frequent shields and her base damage for her skills is increased. An interesting take on her support role while maintaining her key control effects. Tigro is receiving similar treatment, increasing the base damage of his ultimate. His S2 cast is also faster. Hopefully these changes can make Mirko scream. For Angela, her ult cooldown is reverted back to 60 seconds, but now with more spammability of her S1 heal. Her shield and attachment also last way longer, allowing her to provide more value per ultimate and refresh her ultimates quicker. This freaking gusting. Estes received the buff to the hybrid defense he provides from his healing, allowing players to play more towards the Ube playstyle and have more survivability in the teamfights. For Rafaela, her healing and movement speed boost for allies has been significantly increased, with both scaling of her magic power. This allows her niche to be more prominent in the game. Paquito received cooldown buffs to both his S2 and his S3, allowing him to rotate more around the map, dish out combos more efficiently, and retreat out to safety afterwards. A huge buff given that burst XP laners like himself was overshadowed by more sustainable options. Up next are the nerfs. Grog now no longer gains CC immunity, although his skills cannot be interrupted. And for Gadokacha, his taunt duration now scales with the channel time, so no more cheap 1.5 seconds taunt. With how both these heroes were overtaking the meta, these were much needed nerfs. And the biggest nerf of the patch goes to Hayabusa. They nerfed his shallow range but reduced the ultimate cooldown. He now has a much harder time reaching the backline and plays more towards setups from his team. I dislike this change. Now with the major changes out of the way, I will now be going on to the minor adjustments, but I won't be showing any gameplay for this segment. I'll just be flashing the minor buffs and minor nerfs on the screen one by one, so if you need to pause the video to check them out more, feel free to do so. So for the minor buffs, we have Lucas, Atlas, Mia, Lilia, and Nana. And for the minor nerfs, we have Granger and Harith. Now let's talk about a few other battlefield adjustments. For Mythical Honor and above, they're actually increasing the gold gain from the gold lane siege minions, and they're also increasing the base turret HP as well as the base HP. This is made to not make fighter gold so overcrowded in the current meta, as they are more used in high rank matches and professional gameplay, so hopefully these can bring more marksmen back into the gold lane. This also reduces early game snowballing power and gives more comeback potential for losing teams. For the item adjustments, they made it such that Demon Hunter Sword no longer gives lifesteal for the wearer, but instead recovers HP instead. So for example, for someone like Claude, if you take a few more turret shots, it actually benefits him more because he can just heal all of it back up with his ultimate, since he's someone that benefits from DHS very well. So now let's talk about the Rose Gold Meteor adjustments, okay? So the Rose Gold Meteor adjustment actually made it such that the lifesteal is not converted into a hybrid defense, but rather extra physical attack. So as you can see here, I'm on someone like Zilong because it applies to someone that's main role is fighter, right? And this is important later because we'll run some tests later. So before we buy the Rose Gold Meteor, we can see that our physical defense is actually at 105. This is from the full build with Emo and the power potion. But the moment we swap out Emo for the Rose Gold Meteor, we can see that our physical defense actually goes up to 140, okay? So the physical defense goes up to 140, it adds an extra 50, which is the max hybrid defense that you can get for Zilong, or for any other person that uses Rose Gold Meteor. It's 50 as you can see here, right? So for this change, you actually don't have to build like 6 BODs or something. People often get the misconception it's actually easier to hit this benchmark than you think, because even with a crit build like this, you can still be able to get to the benchmark and you can reach the limit very easily. However, now we're gonna run a separate test with Suyo, who you also know as a fighter and assassin, but now he has this passive where it allows him to gain extra damage reduction, and then he can pair it. You might think that he can pair it well with the Rose Gold Meteor, right? Because he gets damage reduction in this form and he gets additional hybrid defense from the Rose Gold Meteor. However, with the standard build like this, which you can still hit the cap, you realize that his physical defense is actually at 97 and that he actually does not benefit from the Rose Gold Meteor, okay? Why this is such is because the hybrid defense that you get is actually halved if your main role is not fighter. Compared to Zilong, Zilong is a fighter assassin, but for him, he is an assassin slash fighter. So there's a difference, which means that this change is more suited towards fighters And the way that they remove the lifesteal on this item, they want to make it less for MMs and more for fighters. So like yeah, they really want to make like Heart's Claws the go-to lifesteal item. That's why they made the changes to like DHS as well as the Rose Gold Meteors. We also have changes to Queen's Wings, Ice Retribution, and Vengeance. And additionally, there's a recording feature for you to share your highlight moments with your friends in-game. And that concludes the Cloudrise patch review. Which adjustment was your favorite? What do you think of the new hero, Sora? Drop your thoughts down in the comment section below and I'll be looking forward to reading all of them. Remember, this is Jarek and I'm not just teaching you what works in ML, I'm teaching you why it works. See you next time.